Do you think your network is important? Most people will now say, yeah, of course, my network is important. What do you think? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Why do you see some organizations, some leaders, some people where networking works so well, and networking is a crucial part of my business as well. However, why do so many fail delivering on the promise of network? And also, what are the opportunities and what are the risks of networking? When you now say there are risks of networking, what kind of risk? You will see in a minute. So when we talk about networking, very important here is that I will give examples as usual, and all of these examples are based on quotes I do. So they're all fully protected with the Fair and Free Use Act, which I'm going to refer to fair dealing here in the UK. So that's about the disclaimer. When we now talk about leading, networking, and recruiting, first, leadership goes a long way. I give you a very simple example, and that's why leadership stays always at number one, no matter what you do. When you, for example, talk to someone who you know they work for company X and you want to work for company X, so they say, hey, do you have any job openings? And they say, yeah, we do. It's a good fit. What about this one? You say, oh, yeah, great. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And then you say, so how is it working for you? People don't say, oh, yeah, we have this very modern office with these parking spaces. And no, that's not what they say. Either they say it's a really great corporate culture, our leaders walk the talk, they are always very down to earth, they are very approachable, etc. Or they say, well, I can tell you we have an amazing team, great people, and we all know how this phrase then goes on. We have an amazing team, great people, but the leaders are just you simply have to endure what they do. It's not great, but they're there, so we can't get rid of them. And that's exactly the problem. Leadership has the so-called omnipresence. Omnipresent means you can see it absolutely anywhere. There's not a single area of the business where leadership does not have an impact. And when you say your leadership isn't great, you must be aware of the fact that the people focus you want to have or pretend to have is simply not there. And that's how it ends very quickly extremely mediocre on either Kununu, which is the German version for rating employers, or Glassdoor.com, which is the more English-speaking version of it. The people focus is what you need to deliver first, and that is where everything starts, because leadership has the highest amount of outreach. And when you now say, how can I get outreach? How can I get outreach to get access to certain resources, access to certain people, access to certain job openings, access to certain areas of expertise? That is where the networking kicks in. So when we talk about networking, and networking, by the way, often people say, look, I'm more of an introvert. This is not for me. I am born and bred Northern German. Believe me, when I moved to the UK and they told me about networking, entering a room of complete strangers and then talk to them is as far out of my comfort zone as it could possibly be. So it is very obvious that I am not a born and bred. I'm not a natural networker. Not at all. I learned networking. And networking is crucially important because networking gives you trust. We talk about the so-called bilateral transitive trusts. And some people might now say, what? Exactly. Bilateral transitive trust. And when you say buy some, can you explain? Yeah, of course I'm going to explain that. So when you, for example, say, let's say you are person X and you want to approach Mrs. Miller. The problem is Mrs. Miller doesn't know you. So of course you can now do cold calling, and there's of course scientific evidence that cold calling works to a certain extent. However, when you want to approach Mrs. Miller to, for example, sell a product, or you want to get in touch for a job opening and you do not know Mrs. Miller, you will quickly end up with the assistant and say, yeah, send a slide deck, send an email, leave a message, give me your business card, thank you, I get back to you. And as you know, they never do. So you need to build this trust. The question is, how do you do that? And let's say you are person X and you want to approach Mrs. Miller for a job opening, or you need some of her expertise, you need her as a resource, or you want to sell a product to her. And now okay, direct way to Mrs. Miller, not really there. But wait. I know this person, Mrs. Helpful. Mrs. Helpful, I met on this convention. We know each other for years. We worked back in the days at uni together, and at our first employer after uni, we're still in touch. I know that Mrs. Helpful knows Mrs. Miller, and they like each other and they trust each other. And that is where the bidirectional, the bidirectional trust comes in. You have a bidirectional trust with Mrs. Helpful. You have no connection to Mrs. Miller. The good thing now is there is a bi-directional trust between Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Helpful. And this trust now shifts to you as long as Mrs. Helpful gives you an introduction to Mrs. Miller. That is the so-called bi-directional, that's the so-called bi-directional transitive trust. That is why people network. And that is, by the way, when you, for example, are looking for certain services, may it be a plumber or a lawyer or whatnot, you can, of course, just Google around, or you can go to any kind of online resource, or you just ask around your neighborhood and say, hey, do you know someone who can? And then they will tell you these people are probably the good ones, and these people are the ones to be avoided. So gaining this trust is crucial because you get access to resources, you get access to people, you get access to job openings, you get access to a lot of things that you had no access to before. However, there is a risk to networking. And many people now say, where on earth could there be a risk to networking? Well, sometimes you have, and that is what networking really is. Networking means you refer qualified people. When people sometimes say, hey, do you have an expert lawyer on XYZ? I refer people who I personally do not even like that much. Of course, it's nice when you have some sort of good feeling with them. However, when you know someone is the subject matter expert, I don't like them personally, but they are the subject matter expert. I rather recommend them over someone who I like more and has less competence. Because that's called networking. Networking is based, proper networking, real networking is based on skill set, based on qualifications. Could be degrees, could be anything else, but it's based on what people can actually do. And here comes the risk. Quite a high number of networking is not networking. It's not networking. It's an insider deal. It's nepotism. It's cronyism. It's corrupting the system. It's pushing people into positions where they shouldn't be. Someone approaches you and say, hey, I really need this job, and then you are the decision maker, and we know each other, from uni, and I don't have the experience yet, but you could put in a good word for me. So what you do is you call it doing them a favor. And this favor means you put someone in the position where they shouldn't be. Why did you do that? Because you will sooner or later say, hey, mate, look, I did you this favor, and guess what I need now? I need a favor back. And then you very quickly are in a so-called tit-for-tat system, as they say in a bit of a mediocre middle-aged English. This for that, if you translate that to modern-day English. It means you're only based on favors. It's not based on skill. First, employees immediately get that. People immediately see when some people enter the system from above due to personal connections, not due to skill set, not due to what they've achieved, not due to experience or anything of a track record, just by who they were born with, the family they grew up in, birthright privilege. And immediately people will not follow these people, and there's no trust. It's the opposite of trust. And also, when you are based solely and only on favors, sooner or later there will be the point where you suddenly say, look, I really can't do you this favor. This just pushes too far. I really can't do that because the risk for me is just too high. Or it simply doesn't follow your agenda, and you say, no, sorry, this is something I don't like, so I'm not going to do you the favor. And the other person will say, how do you dare? Okay, that was it. And then they will make you fall, or they want to make you fall. And when you say, hey, don't we have something like that right now? Yes, exactly. We have something like that on the highest level on this planet, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Donald Trump and Elon Musk. So first, you see that Donald Trump has a tax package. Elon Musk is not happy about that. Also, Elon Musk isn't happy about the EV mandate, the electronic vehicle mandate, coming to an end, where Donald Trump says the electronic vehicle mandate forced people to buy electric cars, which is, of course, utter nonsense. No one was forced to buy any car in the US, and especially not forced to buy electronic vehicles or electric vehicles. And of course, not having the EV mandate harms Tesla. So more taxes, less EV mandate, Elon Musk unhappy. And they were good friends, by a favor, because Elon Musk has zero experience in public administration. His Doge track record, as they call it, is questionable at best. And suddenly, Donald Trump says, look, Elon, you did what you did, and goodbye from here. And what Elon Musk just did, he went on X, which is still a large platform, and just posted on X saying, you know why Donald Trump didn't publish the Epstein files? Because he's in it. Have a good day, Donald J. Trump. That's what he posted. Epstein, if you haven't followed that case, Epstein is connected with pedophilia, crime, ended up in jail, but then killed himself there. Suicide, that's at least what we know as of now. There are a lot of things going on around that, but genuinely a person you do not want to be connected with, especially not in these files you do not want to appear. And it's extremely important here that this is, and it immediately escalated. Donald J. Trump then said, we're going to cut funding for SpaceX. And then Elon Musk said, okay, when you cut my funding, I'm going to decommission the Dragon missile, which the US desperately needs by SpaceX. Back forth. It went for hours. The Tesla stock went in free fall, lost almost 15%, 14.7, I think it was at the end of day one of the whole drama. And then the weekend came, and that's the end of trade, at least. So and by the way, I'm in Washington, D.C. right now for World Pride. So this was topic number one during that evening. Someone said, this is the real housewives of the White House. When you see how two men argue, and you still have people saying women are too emotional to lead, look at what these people like Donald J. Trump and Elon Musk have done, and then look at what Ursula von der Leyen or Angela Merkel have done, or what Ruth Bader Ginsburg has done, or Theresa May. And then I have a question, who's too emotional here? Maybe it's the men, just by scientific evidence in this case, or at least empirical evidence. So when we look at this scenario, this is a typical case of how networking carries a risk. When you have a network based on favors, you will end up in an endless network of favor for favor for favor for favor. And either you will be called out, or someone will quit the network and call you out, or someone will make you fall, and then there is nothing that can save you because there is no scientific backing, no factual backing that keeps you in place. And it gets even worse from there. When networking goes wrong, your recruiting is immediately affected. When you say, hey, these are our leaders, and people who are talented, people who have qualifications, look at your company and say, I have quite a number of big question marks. How do these leaders get to their position? Because they are not qualified for the job. And when you, for example, look at stock exchange listed companies, unlike in, for example, the UK, where you have a monistic system where the board of directors can act pretty freely, in Germany, for example, you have a dualistic system. So you have a board and then you have a supervisory board that controls the board. And when you look at who sits in these supervisory boards, you think these must be the number one experts. Well, some of them are, but sometimes you really have the feeling saying, okay, look, we have these professorships, and after a certain reform a couple of years ago, professorships aren't that well paid anymore in Germany as they tend to be before. And as a thank you note, they gave him one of these supervisory positions. And then you wonder, so how wrong can it go? I just give you an example. When board level members, so for example, C-level people want to have their bonuses agreed, the supervisory board needs to agree on the contract and on the goals connected with the bonus. And the Deutsche Bahn, the German train system, the main German train provider, last year paid significant bonuses to their managers, although they were not performing well. And then it came to public because someone leaked the document that two aspects were not part of their bonification, not part of the bonus. And these two aspects were customer satisfaction and punctuality. What on earth is going on? What do these boards do for a living? What's their main job? Because it can't be expertise on logistics. It can't be. You don't need to be an expert on train logistics to know that customer satisfaction and punctuality, when you transport people from A to B, is a pretty crucial aspect. Even when you transport goods, punctuality and customer satisfaction is the key aspect of having repeat business or one-off business and never again. But here we go again. Once more, we see that leadership went wrong, and the reason for that was simply that some people got a favor. And we see this way too often. You need to lead your network based on knowledge, qualification, and expertise. And very important here, it could be degrees, but it do not necessarily need to have degrees, need to be degrees. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, as I said, and just yesterday I saw an amazing ad by Google saying, break the paper ceiling. I don't know if you're aware of what the paper ceiling is. The paper ceiling is where people say, I can't get a certain job because I don't have a bachelor's degree. And of course, the usual German reaction is, well, then get a bachelor's degree, right? That's one side, but that's one point of view. If you have absolutely no idea about the US, you say something like that. The question is, are you aware of tuition fees here? Because very quickly, these bachelor degrees cost 5 or 6 digit amount of money, and you can default on student loans. It means you can go bankrupt on student loans, lose everything you have based on student loans. And that already affects quite a number of people in the US. So it's not that easy to just say, hey, get a bachelor's degree. And what Google advertised, break the paper ceiling with a link where on Coursera or edX, depending on what kind of qualification you're looking for, they have certificates. Certificates, including exams, they take month and month and month to fulfill. So it's not something you do in an afternoon. And when you have these certificates, they give you an entry role. They give you an entry to Google. And that's where some people know how to build a network based on skill and knowledge, not based on nepotism, cronyism, insider deals, which we see way too often in different parts of free enterprise, public service, politics, anywhere. Because nepotism, cronyism, and insider deals only favors one group, birthright privileged people. And that usually means male, white, straight, cisgender people. I know that some people go wild when I say that, but that's just scientific evidence. When you are born privileged in a rich family, you're white, cisgender, so you basically live in the heteronormativity. People open your doors, people give you networks just because you're born in the so-called right family. That's not achievement. That's not networking. It is nothing else than nepotism, cronyism, and insiders. And that harms organizations massively. And that's why, for example, some people do not just hand over their businesses. I give you a very simple example. One owner-led business, one of my clients, where the owner, who is a couple, and they said to their children, well, first you do vocational training because you need to know the trade. No, you need to know what our people do here when they work with their hands, how we produce items. So they had to do vocational training, not in the parents' business. They had to learn how to work somewhere else where they are just no one. And then they had to go through all the qualification phases and then start at the junior position and work their way up. And now, when the children took over the business, they are highly respected by anyone. But absolutely anyone in the business, because they said, you earned this position, you weren't gifted this position. What you now need to know when you say, hey, how do I now make this work? It's focus, focus, focus. And I can tell you what the main problems here are. Often people say, yeah, I want to have a network, but I just don't like LinkedIn. It's not for me. Nah. Not for me. I don't like LinkedIn. And in Germany, this Xing, no, I just don't like networking online. Oh, and these networking meetings in the evening after work. No, I think I work enough, so I don't go to these networking meetings. No, I just hold no interest in that because I think I work so much I don't want to put in additional hours. That's your problem then. You need to focus on getting your leadership skills, your networking skills, and because as soon as you focus, your recruiting will become immediately better as well. You will attract more talent. You will know more people. When you know more people in the industry, it will be quicker and easier for you to fill certain roles. That's just one out of many examples. So now, after what you heard here, look at your calendar and say, when do you start with your journey of networking and doing it the proper way? Not based on favors where you say, I'm giving a favor to a position or to someone where I know they're not really up to the game, but I still put them in there. No. Proper networking is based on skill set, on qualifications, on people actually getting the job done. I wish you all the best putting your focus in place. As soon as you start that, everything will become better from there. And I wish you all the best doing that. When you now say that sounds like a lot of work, can we have a chat about that? Yes, of course we can. So by the way, when you now listen on YouTube, please leave a like here. Please subscribe to this channel. Put the little bell in as well so you don't miss future episodes. Feel free to leave a comment as well. Happy to discuss whatever you want to discuss. When you are now on, for example, Apple Podcast or Spotify, feel free to leave 5 stars here. Thank you very much. And of course, feel free to recommend this channel, the YouTube channel or the Apple Podcast or Spotify channel on basically any channel you have, either social media or to your friends, colleagues, etc., etc. One very important thing we have, it's leadership tips only on YouTube Shorts. You have a daily leadership tip, 60 seconds or less. Everything is available in English and German, so I'm looking forward to seeing you there. YouTube offers more at the moment because we have more means there. You don't have these short snippets and leadership tips on the podcast channel, so feel free to subscribe to that channel as well. When you are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., feel free to follow us there as well. And of course, you can go to my website, nb-networks.biz, and then you can take a look there as well, what I actually do in my life. When you now say, hey, I'd like to discuss something, but I do not want to discuss it in the comment section. Perfectly okay. Drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com. As soon as you send me an email, I answer any message within 24 hours, and then we can have a chat. There are basically two types of people approaching me. Either they say, hey, we need a trainer, a coach, an interim manager, someone who speaks at our conference. Can you be that person? And yes, of course I can. But you can also simply send me your questions, and then we just have a chat about that. Absolutely no problem. Looking forward to hearing from you there. When you now say you want to have a live session, either on your own or with your whole team, live sessions are available monthly. So the question is, where do you know them? And they are only communicated by our leadership letter. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com and you put your email address in there, what you find in there, as soon as you sign up, you only get one email every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content, ad-free guarantee. So no worries, no advertising. You get full access to all the articles I published, more than 400 in English and German. Full access to all the podcasts, same, again, more than 400 in English and more than 400 in German. And you get to know when is the next live session, and the link to just join the room there is exactly in there. So it's very important that you don't have to register, but we only communicate live sessions via the leadership letter. There is no other means. So when you want to know about that, sign up for that, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in one of our next live sessions. The most important aspect, however, is always the last one I mentioned. Apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive outcome that you obviously want to see in your department, your organization, your business or private life. I'm looking forward to hearing from you about what you put in place. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'm answering any message within 24 hours or less. And at the end of this podcast and at the end of this video cast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.